Hello, everyone, and welcome to how to build like AWS, the show we take real customer stories, bring in the developers from behind the scenes to share with you how you can build solutions like accelerating SAP build service management. We are excited to get into today's session, and I am joined by Otto. Just to introduce myself, my name is Steph Gooch. I'm a senior SA advocate for the customer acceleration team, here to help you with your AWS best practices. Otto, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone? Give them your 1 minute origin story. And also, we're doing a fun thing at the start of these episodes. We want to know, what was the first application that you actually built?
Of course, Steph, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. So I'm Otto Kruse. I'm Principal Solutions Developer at AWS. I've been in the prototyping team for 3 years, where we built cool applications to show customers what they can do on AWS. Before that, I used to work in professional services for AWS, which was also an awesome experience for me. And before that, I did jobs here and there. I worked at Oracle, for example. When you were just asking me about the first app I built, I started to think to myself, damn, my career has been so long. I have no clue anymore what that would be. But one that I built early in my career was a very cool app for one of the companies I was working at. One of the things they did was it was a financial services company, and they took care of people's pensions. And it was very important to see the exact times and dates of live events for people. So I built this event
Okay.
sourced application where you had the slider bar that you could drag across time. And then you would see all their live events pop up and out, and you would have a good sense for what transpired in their life, which of course meant
Wow.
big things for the benefits they were getting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. This like see across your like timeline of yourself. That's pretty cool. So let's get into today's episode. So thank you for joining. This is actually our first episode, so it's very exciting. And like we said at the start, we're choosing different customer stories to dive deep into. So these stories are often kind of published and shared as blogs or as reInvent chat, and we're kind of diving deep into them. So the one that we've chosen today is this SAP story, and we'll make sure that we share the link. So the full story, or like a high level story, is on this blog, which I will share out. But Otto, why don't you give us like a high level view? And also, if anyone's watching, please feel free to put comments, questions throughout in the chat. We're there. We're here to help answer any questions you have about the technology we talk about. But yeah, Otto, give us like a high level summary of what this solution is.
So what transpired was the SAP software company reached out to us. We worked with them, and they asked our help to make to help them envision how we can make it easier for their customers to extend SAP's capabilities with functionality on AWS. So you need to imagine, for example, you have an SAP customer, and they're using SAP and they're happy about it, but they need something particular for them, and they want, for example, to build that thing on AWS. And our example was using S3 storage as a way to extend SAP's storage. Many customers want their stuff on S3, and you tap into a whole bunch of functionality that is available on S3, such as lifetime rules and then auditing things, niceties that they wanted to have. And in our example, SAP asked us if our customers want the attachments that are part of our system to be in S3 also, how would you build that? And the second part of that question was, if you build that, can you build it in such a way that we establish a new pattern of doing this, so that other customers of us that also want to do particular things in AWS have a nice example to start off from. And that was basically that got us started on building this solution to extend SAP with storage on S3, and to open source it and establish a pattern for other similar such solutions.
Brilliant. So with the team that you work in, which is the PACE team, under the same kind of department as mine, which is customer acceleration team, there's also the digital innovation team. So this working backwards concept that you guys do. So you work backwards from the big problem. So how would you define their problem that they had for this customer? As you kind of mentioned the high level solution, but what was the challenge they had?
So their challenge basically is customers that were using their platform and that wanted to do particular things in that platform. For example, they wanted to the stuff that I was just describing to them to
Okay.
extend SAP functionality with storage on S3. They would have to build that inside SAP's platform. And one of the ways could be by having logic and what SAP calls business rules. And one of the problems there was if many of SAP's customers implement such business rules and they do so in a, how do you say this, in a non-optimal way, you end up wasting a lot of compute on SAP's side. This is not good for SAP.
Okay.
Hence, they were asking us for a mechanism to make it easier for customers to do things the right way. As SAP calls that the clean core approach. And that is where you shift all the heavy lifting and also the compute of what it is that you're doing to SAP. So, for example, for backing up of attachments, you can imagine that sometimes attachments are big and you need to shove a whole bunch of bytes across the network, and you don't want to encumber subs internal processes. However, they end up building it with having to parse all these bytes, so you want to hand that off. And they asked you to think along with them, since we know AWS best, how you might do so.
Okay, I've actually had a question, which is, did you consider other services outside of S3 when you were planning this solution?
Well, it was the obvious service for us to use, to be very
Okay,
honest. And in this instance, SAP, they wanted us to use S3 because it was
specifically
something that
S3.
their customers were asking for.
Okay, it is the kind of go-to service, which is great. So when we talked about this before, the question I wanted to ask was like, how do you start? And you mentioned as an SAP, you can't change the whole application, but you can kind of have a bit of a plugin. So what was the process in starting building out the solution?
So I think the story here is, in general, you need to do certain things on AWS. You need a trigger. You need some functionality to zip a file and store it on S3. So you need compute. And then you start thinking, that's the way we work, about how can we orchestrate this? Which other services do we need to do all of this? And in this case, it started with a bit of an exploration on SAP side, because in order to know how to actually do this and make it work with SAP FSM system, we had to understand how that system works. So we had some help from the SAP team. We did a bit of working backwards, if you will, understanding, putting ourselves in the shoes of their customers, using their system, understanding how that system works. We got a few quick crash courses in using SAP, and then it started to become apparent what would be our entry points, what would be our triggers to make this work. So on SAP side, that's a functionality they call business rules. Business rules
Okay.
are like their Lambda functions, if you will. They're the escape hatch for customers. You want something particular in SAP FSM, then you code a business rule to trigger on a particular event, and that business rule can then call out to a webhook that you need to define somewhere, and then your webhook goes on and does its thing. So that's what we ended up building. We built a mechanism where a SAP business rule can call a webhook that we ended up implementing with API Gateway, and that starts this entire backup process. And honestly, API Gateway, Lambda, S3, DynamoDB, the serverless suite of AWS services, they are our bread and butter in the prototyping team. Whenever we do build solutions for customers, they're at the top of the list. So we know them very well. But there is this awesome website, and it's called Serverless Land, that has a lot of these patterns. So if you're new to serverless as a customer, and these patterns aren't ingrained in you as much as they are with us in the prototyping team, that's an awesome website to get to know how to do these things. How do I build a webhook with API Gateway that uses Lambda to do whatever, right? And there's lots of patterns on that awesome website that are documented and show customers how to do it. So you could say that website is a little bit in our head because we do this every day. But there you have it.
That's very cool. Yeah, check out the website. Throughout, people watching and haven't seen this before, welcome. And throughout, we'll be dropping in relevant links that you guys can access throughout the episode, but also put any comments, questions. I've had one which is, love this, empathy for users goes a long way for understanding what is first right, the thing to solve. Yes, agree. I love the fact that this team constantly focuses on the challenge and versus kind of like using the newest technology. It's more about these kind of interesting solving the problem, which is definitely more important. When it comes to this SAP solution, does anything kind of connect it to the industry it sits in, that you would like to kind of showcase for this one?
That's a tough question. Let me share my screen. Can I? And I'll have a
Yeah,
brief, I'll give you a brief glimpse of that system. I need
yeah.
to find the
You might
right
want to
button
zoom in a
again.
touch.
Am I?
Oh, the
Oh, I
classic
was
screen
already
share.
sharing.
It's
Share
okay. While
screen.
you bring that up, as a little reminder, if you have any follow-up questions from today's session, you can email cat.leadership@amazon.com and they'll come directly to me. And we can also share any resources if you want to follow up. But yeah, I'll bring up your screen. So perfect. And if you want to zoom in a touch, I think that might help.
Let me do that. Command plus. Oh, it's not the best website to zoom in. See that? What you so
It's okay.
what
Talk us through what we see. Yeah.
All right. So SAP FSM. FSM stands for Field Service Management. And it's used by customers who have engineers go out in the field to do repairs usually. So for
Okay.
example, my microwave broke down like a year ago, and I called the microwave company that I bought it from, and they sent an engineer my way to have a look at my microwave. And perhaps that company, I don't know, would have been using this system actually to plan their engineer workforce, because they're about matching incoming tickets, which in like my broken microwave, to engineers and planning that out. And such an engineer would then come to a site, my home in this case, and they would have a look, and they would open their iPad or whatever tablet they have, right? And they would also open this application, and it would show the engineers. This is, by the way, the planning page, right? But the engineers would see something differently, and they might take a picture of my microwave, opened it up, you see all the wires, and you see where it's black and burned out, and they might take a picture and save that as an attachment for that ticket. And with
Okay.
all these engineers being out there in the field, taking pictures, videos, right? You can imagine that the amount of bytes accumulates very rapidly, which is why
Yeah.
you want to hand that off to a service such as S3.
I see. So when you think about it at that scale of if there's a builder or engineer in every single household, that's hundreds and thousands of gigabytes of images and controlling all of that. Oh, that sounds like a stressful situation. There's a funny comment which is, oh, that's unlucky for your microwave to break, I guess. What's the worst household item to break down? I would say fridge. Just as a quick reply to that, the fridge and freezer is going to be the worst. People in
I'm
the chat,
with you.
what do you think is the worst thing? This is like drop in some funny things that you think is the worst thing to break. Okay, brilliant. So that's the kind of setting the
Microwave is pretty
scene.
bad too, by the way.
Oh, did you? Was it you were just like, I've never known how much I need my microwave until it breaks.
Exactly.
So we're going into like the development side of it. So you mentioned the serverless patterns, which helps you have that building block of kind of getting started. Were there any really big challenges you faced when it came to building out this solution?
Let me bring up the architecture for a second, and while we have that, I'll talk about that.
Sure, there we go.
So this is the architecture at a high level. Let me briefly talk to it. So here we have SAP FSM's system,
Hmm.
and here we have the users. So these users, they're interacting with that system. But then
Okay.
what this box here is the business rule engine that is part of SAP FSM. And what that business rule engine can do is call out webhooks. So one of the first challenges we had to take care of is like building a webhook that can be called, which is straightforward in a way, because the obvious candidate on our side for that is API Gateway. The challenge is, of course, doing it securely. So the business rule engine of SAP is currently um, it supports only static HTTP headers. So that
Okay.
kind of limited our choices. So we had to go with an API key-based approach. Our favorite approach would have been SIG v4. And I submitted
Okay.
a feature request to the SAP FSM folks to implement SIG v4 support in their business rule engine. But while that's not there yet, we're using an API key. And what we
Mhm.
also do on API gateway side, which is something you can configure in the resource policy of an API, if you know it, you can enter an IP whitelist. And the SAP FSM folks on their public website somewhere is the list of IP addresses that they operate on. So what we ended up doing
Ah.
was we IP allow list that set of IP addresses. That means that only only callouts from their systems can reach your API gateway, and on top of that, we have then the API key off scheme to make sure that only your sub FSM tenant is actually calling your API, right, and not another customer
Okay.
that's also running their workload on. So
Yeah.
that was one of the problems, or let's call it challenges. The other challenge that I think was very cool about this is they also wanted to show in a seamless way the operations of all of this on SAP FSM's side. So what they asked us is our users, for example, the admins of our system, they should just go into SAP, into the system, and then see, for example, how many backups do we currently have? How is
Mhm.
this number of bytes on our S3 increasing? Are there any problems with the webhook? And if so, jump to there directly. So we had to figure out how to do that, and it turned out SAP FSM folks obviously taught us this, that they have an extension mechanism which works like an iframe. So you get to build a web page, which we did with React, hosted on CloudFront,
Mhm.
and from the you can hang that, if you will, as an iframe inside the sub FSM application, and then you can authenticate that using a mechanism that is exposed by SAP using their SDK. You can request on the fly an SAP JWT,
Mhm.
and that becomes your authentication mechanism. So we built a web page and an API that verifies these JWTs, and that established a new authentication approach for doing extensions with SAP on AWS, and we
Oh,
thought that was
wait.
very cool.
So this is a brand. You guys made a new way of authenticating into SAP. You just kind of that's one of the out. That's so cool that was what you
Yeah, that's
guys
an
created
awesome.
from this.
We
Yeah.
assembled it from a couple of well-known libraries on AWS sites, such as the library AWS Verify, and we had a look at how SAP does their authentication, and we have this new way of getting their JWTs and verifying them on our API. So I think that's an awesome pattern, and also for other customers
Yeah.
that want to build extensions unrelated to S3 storage, whatever, they can use this as a pattern, which is why we open source our solution on GitHub so
Oh
that
yeah.
people can come
Yes.
and look and
I
see.
will share that. Yeah, check out the GitHub. Also, in the other corner, I can't I never know which way. In the other corner, if you have any feedback for this episode, please scan the QR code and drop in a little note, or if you want to get in contact about any other things that we've spoken about. But let me share the link to the GitHub repo, because yes, if you would like to take advantage and use this solution, then they have kindly open sourced it, which is very, very cool, and can kind of go through that. Perfect. So we will be
Shall
coming
I?
to a bit of a demo. Oh yeah, go on, sorry, go for it.
Yes, I was just about to say, shall I demo a little bit?
So before we jump into the demo, I want to dive deep into some of the technology that you mentioned. So you mentioned things like API Gateway, S3 Lambda, with CloudFront, WAF, Secrets Manager. How do you, as a builder, thinking about our kind of builder developer audience, how do you choose what services to bring into an architecture? Do you have any kind of like processes you follow, or just knowledge, or any advice for people?
So like I said, this is a bit of a hard question for us prototypers because we do build this on a day-to-day basis, so it goes automatically. You have your usual suspects that are always awesome services to use because they're secure, they're relatively cheap, they're pay by
Yeah.
pay pay by usage, such as API Gateway and S3, and we love to use those services. So those are on the top of our list, and then in our brain we start assembling and putting the puzzle pieces together and say, yeah, this can
Yeah.
work. An interesting thing, something that I like, for example, is what we wanted to build this using EventBridge. So what we envisioned
Okay.
was whenever an attachment is created on SAP FSM side, that should trigger an event on EventBridge, even
Hmm.
though the only mechanism SAP FSM currently have is using webhooks. So we built a little component with API Gateway that directly shoves an event onto AWS EventBridge. The idea
Okay.
that is that SAP FSM might one day become one of the SaaS partners that we have for EventBridge, and they might actually start raising such events themselves.
Hmm.
And then we have something listening to this event. So it's asynchronous. So the event is thrown. Hey, there's a new attachment inside SAP, and then an observer that is subscribed to this event then takes that,
Hmm.
which is a Lambda function, which is another one of our usual suspects. If you can fit your compute into within the 15-minute time window of Lambda, which is ample for
Yeah.
these attachments, then you would choose Lambda because it's such a great service that is very much worry free, and you shift a lot of heavy lifting to AWS. So our Lambda function then calls out to SAP FSM, and it needs secrets for that. And there is really only one pattern. If your Lambda function needs secrets, you will want to use Secrets Manager. So there
Excellent.
you have it.
Yeah, and
We
this kind of, and you mentioned as well, there's that serverless library that we mentioned earlier. I think a big piece of advice, if you are learning to build and kind of wanting to explore these areas, check out the repo that we just shared and use that as an inspiration. Because I agree with Otto, there's a few things that you start to get your hands into and start to use regularly. I'm the same. Whenever I build something, I'm like Lambda, and probably sometimes I should not be using Lambda, but it's the one I know. And the more you build up the skills, you could be like, oh, is this better for serverless or containers or things like that, and kind of, do you know, actually, I just released a blog on that, so I'll share that while you bring up the demo. But let's bring up the demo. So set the scene. So we mentioned as well, you have this idea that you have all these people who are sharing files, and you need to kind of scale this out. Let's have a look. If you want to bring up the demo, you can kind of walk us through what an end result of this solution looks like to hopefully inspire people watching at home to kind of build some of their own things. So if I bring up your screen.
Let me do that. So first, I'll quickly show. I'll talk to this for 10 seconds. So this is our solution on GitHub, and it makes it really easy to deploy. So if you want to try this out, our solution for S3 backups and SAP FSM, you can use any of these 4 CloudFormation links. And if you follow it, it will take you to a stepper that just allows you to deploy this to your account. I already did that in my
Oh, wow.
account,
Okay.
but this is how easy it is to try this yourself if you already have an AWS account and SAP FSM. So what ends up happening if you follow that stepper, you'll get this CloudFormation stack. And everything that I showed you in the diagram is in here, right? Pre-configured for you.
Okay.
Amongst which the URL of the web app, which is the extension hosting URL. Now you'll see that if I open that it doesn't work, but that makes sense because I'm now running this plain in my browser, and you're supposed to run this inside the iframe of SAP FSM. So let's do that, Ned. Let's do that now. So this is the SAP application. In order to add this extension, you would go to Foundational Services. They have a little marketplace, if you will, of other extensions, but this is a custom extension that's not in a marketplace, that's developed by you, their customer, and you can add them like this. And you simply paste in that URL, and you'll see it gets our data, Amazon S3 backup. You
Nice
have to
and
check
quick.
this, even though we don't use your data. Done, extension installed. Then if you go back to the home page, 1, 2, 3, I may have to refresh. I will refresh.
I like the
Then you
dramatic 1, 2,
see,
3.
then you see the new box appear here. And if you click this, the exact same page loads that I just showed you, and that what errored out because it wasn't run within the context of SAP FSM. And this goes back to that off mechanism that I mentioned. Now it runs inside the SAP FSM iframe, and we're able to get the authentication, get the JWT token, and are able then to call our APIs. And what you see here is bunch of things. So you have a direct link to the bucket with the backups. If you would click it, you would just go to S3 inside the AWS console, and you can see all the backups that you've made, that the system has made on your behalf. And you see a bunch of diagrams that come directly out of CloudWatch.
Cool.
So this is looking straight into CloudWatch, which was another cool thing we thought in this prototype, because CloudWatch actually has an API that allows you to get a point-in-time PNG screenshot of a particular metric. So we chose 5 metrics that are then displayed in this React-based web application. So go check it out on GitHub, because all that code is in there.
Yeah.
It's not the most interesting dive.
Because it's kind of brand new. But just to check, so you said that there's a way that you can grab snapshots of CloudWatch dashboards and put it into a React app. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, that can be super helpful to just show some metrics in your React app and customize it without having people forcing them to step out and go to the AWS console. So this is great for that seamless experience. And then if you want to go to the console, we just have the links here to directly take you to for example, the logs of the backup function.
And then you can run the lovely insights to kind of get some insight. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that was a feature. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that to kind of summarize in a high level some of the cool things. I think definitely that little nugget of information about the CloudWatch logs, but also the power that this team, I'm just always impressed by the Pace team whenever I get to work with you guys. That's why we made this show. But the kind of things that you think about, you think outside of the box to create a whole new way of authentication into SAP is something very, very cool. So some call to actions for the folks watching. If I said before, if you have any kind of specific comments, questions, please email cat-thought-leadership@amazon.com and I'll be able to kind of help with any questions. We have a very, very quick question, less than a minute. Okay. Is it safe to run front-end code in iframe on your SAP account that is built by other developers? Very, very quick. Yes or no?
You need to review that code. Because if you run it as an iframe inside SAP FSM, it has access to the JDT, the sign-in details of the user. So no, it's not in general safe. You need to review that code or trust those developers.
That is great. Thank you for that question. Love it. That is a great suggestion. Always review the code people give you. So a couple of call to actions for the folks watching. Please read the blog for kind of more in depth and how to get into the GitHub repo. Everything is in here. If you want to check out the rest of the episodes in our show, you can go on Builder Center and check out all of these. We have so many cool ones from Video, Carrier, NASCAR, some telco customers, lots of fun things. I also do another show called The Keys to AWS Optimization on Thursdays. So check that out. And finally, we have our own department, LinkedIn group, so you can join the customer acceleration team, so you can kind of see all the different things we put out. We're putting out lots of reInvent talks, so you can check that out. And with that, thank you so much, Otto, for doing our very, very first session.
You're very welcome.
That has been it for us for today. We'll be back every 2 weeks through to the end of the year, so we will see you all next time. Bye.